Summer rice flowers have crossed, and there is a big hole in the back of the head. Who did it? Good news, the hard-earned supermarket is here. Bad news, the county where she lives has been invaded. Xia Daohua sacrificed her life to save people in the war, rescued a handsome man, brought out 3 oil bottles, and several waves of enemy troops and assassins. Xia Daohua disobeyed the imperial decree and ended up becoming the regent, even being entrusted by the late emperor as an orphan. I heard that Xia Daohua has not married yet, and the matchmaker has stepped on the threshold. The general waved his hand and drove them all away. The regent is not going on a blind date today. Keywords of the novel. Take the space supermarket to farm without pop-ups. Take the space supermarket to farm. Download the complete set of TXT, Take the space supermarket to farm. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Crossing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Crossing. Summer rice flowers are awakened by bitterness. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw the culprit. A young girl with dark hair, a double bun, and a white oval face. The girl's eyebrows and eyes were gentle, her facial features were delicate, and she looked inexplicably familiar. However, this guy is holding a large, rough porcelain bowl with a notch, frowning gently with a worried expression, feeding himself Chinese medicine spoonfuls by spoonfuls. Glancing at the thick porcelain bowl, the medicinal soup was as black as ink. Xia Daohua tightly closed his mouth and refused to drink it again. The girl saw Xia Daohua open her eyes, but turned her head and closed her mouth, dodging and evading. With a loud bang, she placed the big bowl on the table, stood up, turned her head, and shouted loudly at the door. Dad! Mom! Grandpa! Milk! Rice flowers are awake. The voice was clear and loud, causing Xia Daohua's heart to tremble. This little sister looks a bit hot-tempered. Unexpectedly, the hot-tempered little sister did not swing her iron fist, but turned around with a cheerful expression, caring for Xia Daohua in a series of voices. Daohua, do you still have a headache? Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Upon hearing these questions, Xia Daohua didn't have time to think. The heavy old cotton curtain had already been lifted, and a group of people rushed in, rushing towards her with great strides, bringing a cold breeze. The leader is a middle-aged man with a tall and sturdy physique, a Chinese-style face, thick eyebrows and big eyes, who looks loyal. One step behind him was a middle-aged woman with gentle eyebrows and fair skin. On the woman's side, she closely followed 2.5 big children, one tall and one short. One had 2 small toes pierced, and the other had not yet left a head. Afterwards, there is a square-faced old man and a round-faced old lady who look quite married. Finally, followed by a middle-aged woman with slender eyes, high cheekbones, thin lips, a slender figure, and a somewhat sarcastic appearance. Everyone is wearing a thick cotton jacket and pants, with a blue coarse fabric shirt and pants on the outer cover. The sleeves are loose, and the pants are plump and tidy. Unfortunately, there are several patches of varying sizes, and the colors of the patches are not very consistent. Both men and women wear buns. The man is wearing a plain cotton handkerchief, while the woman is wearing a carved peachwood hairpin. At first glance, it looks a bit like a realistic costume drama crew. Xia Daohua opened her mouth, and before she could speak, she was overwhelmed by a long string of questions. Daohua, are you awake? Daohua, how do you feel? Is there any discomfort on your body? Daohua, do you still have a headache? Do you remember how it was hurt? Daohua, I left you half a sugar ball. I'll give it to you after you finish drinking the medicine. Daohua. Amidst this pile of excited and concerned voices, there was also a sharp and disharmonious voice that sounded very abruptly. Oh my, look at our rice flowers. They just stumbled and got a cut on their head, and now they have become Miss Tianjin. The white silver flowed out like flowing water, but in exchange for a few bowls of bitter medicine soup, the whole family didn't even blink their eyes. Poor my Erlang, he's almost 19 years old and doesn't have the money to marry a wife yet. Upon hearing this, the whole room suddenly became quiet. The round-faced old lady stretched her face and angrily rebuked in a deep voice. The second family, who can't speak, bites at the grass roots and squints. Stay where it's cool. You don't speak, and no one sells you as mute. Inaka, that's your own niece. Could it be that you were really ruthless, just watching the blood dripping from the back of Inaka's head in order to marry Erlang? The woman with a harsh face was very dissatisfied at the words and angrily retorted. Why are we just so petite and expensive in our manor households? Whose child has been knocked and touched? Isn't it just a handful of grass and wood ash that stops bleeding? Who is as precious as our rice flowers? I just broke my head on the edge of the well and eagerly sent it to Pujitang. Is that a place where mudlegs like us can dig and eat in the soil? The round-faced old lady's face not only grew longer, but also turned black. At that time, Daohua had also used grass and wood ash, and the blood was still dripping out, unable to stop at all. When they arrived at Pujitang, Dr. Wang gave them 2 injections and the blood stopped. I only drank the medicine for 3 days, and then I woke up. Now that Daohua is fine, are you causing trouble? Where is it? Are you feeling uneasy about picking up rice flowers and saving your life? Since you care so much about the silver, why don't you go find Dr. Wang and get the silver back? If you have the ability, go. 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 You go now. The round-faced old lady spoke and even pushed the woman with a harsh expression twice. The woman was pushed back in a row, but she dared not fight back, let alone go find the Dr. Wang. Her voice involuntarily lowered a bit, but her complaint did not stop. Mom, what are you saying? At least Inaka is also my own niece. How can I not feel sorry for her? It's just that you, an old man, have to level a bowl of water, right? Big brother and sister-in-law live in the town, eating and drinking spicy food, so I won't say anything. Who wants us, De Lang, to be the seed of reading books? Our old Xia family is going to change their social status and honor their ancestors. We need to rely on Daolang to study and become the top scholar and high-ranking official in the future. My father has said these truths many times, and I am very clear and convinced in my heart. De Lang hugged his hot and chubby wife every day, and the child was almost born. We Erlang, however, are lonely and have been single for so many years. I have endured all of this. After all, Erlang and I don't know how to read. We are just digging for food in the dirt, so we naturally dare not compare ourselves to literary stars like De Lang. But our Erlang, he is also the biological grandson of our old Xia family. We Erlang can't compare to Daolang, can't we even compare to a little girl like Daohua? Although Daohua is a good child, she is actually a girl. To put it bluntly, our old Xia family has so many girl movies, and she's not the only one missing. Look at the fourth brother's family alone, there are 3 daughters. Just the money spent on treating rice flowers is enough to give Erlang a wife. As a second aunt, I am not unwilling to treat Daohua's illness. I really can't swallow this breath. Why treat Daohua's illness? You can always afford money, but when it's your turn to talk to my younger brother about his wife, you can't afford money. In our 10 miles and 8 villages, any young man as old as Erlang has not yet married a wife. As he spoke, his voice rose again, causing everyone's ears to buzz. Xia Daohua's face was dull and confused, and she was completely bewildered. Last night, she just had a drink with her friends. Although she drank a little too much, she didn't want to travel through time. Open a new book, seeking collection, investment, and female frequency recommendation tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Separation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Separation. However, while everyone's attention was drawn to the harsh woman, Xia Daohua had carefully observed the environment and herself. If it weren't for time travel, how could she have become a little girl only 7 or 8 years old? Her emotions were instantly very complicated. It is not easy to quickly adjust one's mindset and adapt to a new identity. In my mind, I kept rushing through some fragmented images, which should be the original memories of this body. Just this feeling, it's like watching a movie at 10 times the speed, or a black and white silent film. The information that can be captured by fleeting light and fleeting shadows, as well as dragonflies skimming the water, is very limited. What surprised Xia Daohua the most was that before she could recognize all the dozens of family members in her new identity, this thriving family suddenly split up. Speaking in detail, this matter is somewhat related to her injuries. The old couple originally planned to propose a marriage to Erlang this year. But because Xia Daohua was seriously injured in an accident, the old couple couldn't watch their granddaughter die, so they took out some money to treat her injury. This treatment cost a whopping 228 coins of silver. That's all, it's Wang Tai's kind heart. Seeing that Jiang, the mother of Daohua, was crying pitifully, she was able to waive the diagnosis and treatment fee as a result. 2 taels and 8 taels of silver, in the northern border area, are enough for ordinary households to live for several months. After all, with just 20 taels of silver, it's enough for an ordinary family of 10 to live a comfortable year without worrying about food and drink. Of course, it's purely a dream to say that you can marry a daughter.in.law and come back with these 2 or 8 coins of silver. The weddings, funerals, and weddings of the Great Chu dynasty were all significant expenses that cost a lot of money. Marrying a legitimate daughter from a family and returning to become a daughter.in.law, without considering any other expenses, the dowry alone costs 10 taels of silver. But although these 2 or 8 coins of silver are not enough to marry a daughter.in.law, hiring a good matchmaker is more than enough. Such as tea and wine money, shoe and foot money, and thank you gifts, with this money, everything has a place to settle. If you were more meticulous, you could even have some surplus. The old couple took out this money, and the original plan to propose a marriage to Erlang could only be postponed for about 6 months. Yang felt that the old couple were too biased and treated Erlang unfairly. When Xia Daohua had just woken up, the second aunt had originally come to check the situation. But as soon as I saw everyone gathered around the girl Daohua, constantly asking for warmth and comfort, the sense of grievance in my heart could no longer be suppressed. In a moment of displeasure, a commotion erupted. I was thinking that even if I couldn't make any money, at least I could still breathe a sigh. However, the more Aunt Air spoke, the more she felt wronged and felt that her family was losing a lot. At that time, she was so passionate that she couldn't help but shout out that she wanted to split up and live a different life. The old man of the Xia family has a gentle temper and is easy to talk about. But the old lady Zhou was a sour-faced and stubborn person, with a stubborn temper. She always ate soft rather than hard, and never been manipulated in her life. When the second daughter.in.law made such a fuss, the old lady suddenly became angry and immediately agreed. Even if later on, the second wife put a mask on her face and even pulled her coat collar over to apologize to her, the old lady didn't let go. Allow the second wife to knock her forehead to the ground, making a loud noise. After all, I gritted my teeth and divided this house. The Xia family has been married for over 40 years, giving birth to more than 10 children, and eventually gave birth to 5 sons and 2 daughters. At present, except for her youngest daughter Xia Yujiao, all 6 children have already started their own families and careers. Although the youngest daughter has not yet married, she has already settled on her husband's family. The old couple, at least on the surface, achieved a flat bowl of water. The family property is basically divided equally into 6 parts, 1 for each son, and 1 for the elderly couple with their unmarried youngest daughter. The houses in the family are allocated to each head, and they are all the ones they used to live in. The land at home is a total of 100 acres. The elderly couple left 30 acres as coffins, divided 12 acres for each son, and the remaining 10 acres were divided into 5 acres for each of their eldest and youngest daughters. Each son is required to pay 200 won in pension money to the elderly couple every month. My daughter also needs to pay 100 won per month. The livestock at home are difficult to distinguish between a cow and a mule, so they are all left for the elderly couple. During busy farming days, each head of the house can come and borrow from the elderly couple. 2 pigs were slaughtered and divided into meat during the Chinese New Year. There are exactly 12 chickens, 2 for each head, and 2 for the old couple. There are still many such trivial terms. I heard Xia Daohua admire the old couple's meticulous and thoughtful thinking. Because the old lady had a firm will and a fair distribution, and even though the family was divided, everyone still had to live together in the future, so the whole process was basically harmonious. It ended without much fuss. When Xia Daohua found out about this, the separation documents had already been signed. She also had a face-to-face meeting with Uncle Li Zhengwang, who came to the house as a witness, and Mr. Xia's biological brother, Xia Pingkang. These two, after being witnesses to the separation of the old Xia family, specially took a detour to come to Xifang to see Xia Daohua. He also comforted Xia Yutian and Jiang Shi with a few words, saying things like, "If you don't die in a major disaster, you will have good fortune." Daohua Nyang Jiang brought out 2 bowls of brown sugar water for guests, brewed thick. The 2 guests chatted while spinning their bowls and drank up their drinks. Uncle Wang has sparse hair, tightly tied in a pitiful little bun, wearing a net scarf, but has a thick, long beard that is slickly combed, indicating that the owner of the beard is very caring. Although Xia Pingkang is the elder brother of Xia Pingyan, the eldest son of the Xia family, the 2 brothers do not look much like the same family, but each has their own unique characteristics. The most similar thing between the 2 is their thick, black hair. Xia Daohua was very satisfied to find that her grandfather, Xia Pingyan, looked even better. 2 respected elderly people only sat briefly in the 4th room before leaving. As they left, they repeatedly explained to Xia Daohua's father. "Yu Tian, after all, your father and mother are old, and no matter how strong their bodies are, it is inevitable that they may feel a little dizzy and hot-headed. Your big brother's family is always in town and can't be relied upon. There are so many children in your second brother's family, and your second sister-in-law is not a virtuous one, let's not mention it. Your third brother is quite conscientious, but he still can't take care of his own affairs. Your younger brother is still young, and he is a bit of a homebody. Among so many descendants, you are at least the most reliable. Although we have separated our families, we do not separate our properties, and everyone lives together. You should be more vigilant and try to take care of your parents and sisters as much as possible." Xia Yutian smiled heartily and agreed, while Jiang also stood aside, bowing her brows and smiling gently. "Xia Daohua is like this, I heard about the separation of families." Sister Xia Lihua listened to these words, but she looked disapproving and snorted lightly with disdain. Seeking collection, seeking investment, seeking female frequency recommended ticket smiley face, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Joy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Joy. Xia Daohua stole a glance at Lihua, who nodded at her nose and said, "Don't listen to their nonsense. Our mistress is in good health." Daohua nodded with a smile. She's not really a child, how could she not know where the real anger of Lihua lies? However, since Pear Flower is unwilling to say it, she won't point it out either. After seeing off the guests, Xia Yutian and Jiang walked back slowly, shoulder to shoulder. It can be seen that both of them looked very relaxed. Daohua suddenly realized that perhaps it was not just Bon Yang who wanted to split up. According to the original owner's memory, Xia Daohua knew that before the separation, the money of the old Xia family was centrally managed, and each head of the house was not allowed to hide private money. Whether it's the harvest from farming, going to the town to do odd jobs during the slack season, or doing some manual work of weaving baskets. Every copper coin earned by each homeowner must be handed over to the public middle school. The old lady Zhou manages money very tightly. Say all the good things, don't expect her fingers to leak a little more. However, thanks to Zhou's meticulous calculation. Not to mention anything else in the old Xia family, with so many people, they have never been hungry during the busy farming season and the idle farming season. Every year before winter, I am willing to scrape off the kong, dig out the ashes, and rebuild the flue. The thatch on the roof flew away, and the walls were torn, even willing to pay for repairs. Every year, when it's time to make winter clothes and bedding, new cotton is also added. Compared to the neighboring households, the old Xia family eats well, dresses warmly, lives comfortably, and naturally looks better. Not only is he taller, but even his skin color is much whiter than others. Such talents are even easier to get married than others. However, Erlang was indeed delayed. He was a bit older, no wonder Erbuanyang would feel wronged for Erlang. However, if there is no separation of families, the marriage of Erlang will still be a matter of money from the public. And since the family has been separated this time, the marriage of Erlang can only be paid for by Erfang himself. Erbo's initial reaction was so intense that he left several blue and purple slap marks on Erbonyang's face. He even brought Erbonyang over to kowtow and apologized to Zhou Shi. Ultimately, it was just for the sake of money. Except for Erlang, who is getting older and wants to propose a marriage, Sanlang and Sailang should also marry a wife in a few years. Peach blossoms, apricot blossoms, and plum blossoms all have their roots. Which item is free of silver? Wedding, funeral, and wedding. Zhou's heart was also like a mirror, very clear, so she decided to divide the family neatly. Since I have endured hardships, and you still don't appreciate it, why don't I accept your complaints? The apparent savings at home were a total of 66 taels. Zhou divided the rooms according to their heads, giving 12 liang to each head and a small amount to 2 daughters, each with 3 liang. But no one knows how much silver is left in the old couple's private property. However, if we calculate based on the annual harvest of farming and selling grain, 66 liang is already a staggering number. Whoever comes here has to praise the old couple for being able to save time. It is surprising that each room head can receive so much silver. So each room was somewhat overjoyed. How can I be unhappy when I am in charge of my own family and I have some money to start with? Of course, except for large houses. De Fong is the most fiercely opposed to family separation, even more resolute than the regretful heir Fong. After all, if the family's income is not divided, it is all up to the old man and the old lady to decide how to distribute it. As long as the 2 elders are comforted, the life of the big house can be relaxed and comfortable. Now that the family is divided, the big house cannot openly ask for money from its brothers. And relying solely on the elderly couple to plant so little land, even if the big house tries to coax the old man and the old lady, it won't be able to make a lot of money. However, Zhou has such a tough temper. Since she has a firm heart, no one can break it back. Although De Fong was in unbearable pain, he had no choice but to scold his brothers under the pretext of criticizing their unfilial behavior. In the end, he was scolded back by Lao Wu because he cursed too harshly. Since Big Brother is so filial, why don't you bring your parents and younger sister to live in the town, so that our parents can also live a good life as servants? Anyway, my younger sister will be out of the house this year. Even if she moves to the town and stays with her older brother and sister. In law, it won't cost much. Coincidentally, you can also learn from your virtuous sister. In law how to be a family council member and how to serve your parents-in-law. The boss immediately blushed and quickly defended himself. Old Wu, who are you listening to? Your sister. In law and I live very frugally in town, so we call ourselves servants. If your eldest nephew is studying in the academy, he must bring a servant. This is the rule in their academy, not that we need to show off. Lao Wu sarcastically smiled and said, "Are you being careless, big brother? You know it clearly in your heart. Anyway, you see that we guys are all unfilial and despicable, so why don't you bring your parents to your side and take action to fulfill your filial piety? You can also give us guys a good example." The eldest brother was scolded by the fifth brother, completely losing his temper, but he was used to his older brother's airs and couldn't possibly bow down and admit his mistake, so he shifted the responsibility onto the eldest couple. "When I first moved to town, I said I would pick up my parents. But our parents are used to being diligent and cannot do without these few acres of land at home. They don't want to go with us. Now that we have split up, it would be best if they are willing to live with us in town." Although the boss's mouth was hard, his heart trembled a bit, and his voice trembled a bit. Lao Wu sneered disapprovingly, causing Lao Da's face to turn even redder. Others also watched the play coldly, lazy and indifferent. The old lady pursed her lips and mercilessly hit 50 big boards each. "Old Wu, let's not say a few words. After all, it's your big brother. Do you have a sense of seniority? Boss, please also shut up for me. Your father and mother are not old and confused yet. Don't you know the little tricks in your hearts? I'm not going anywhere with your father, and don't get angry in front of your brothers. How can you show off your authority?" Zhou spoke with a stern face and suddenly fell silent, and even his sons dared not explode. When Pear Flower learned from Rice Flower, her face lit up with excitement. She was so lifelike that both Rice Flower and her sister Linghua couldn't help but giggle. Jiang listened while she also pursed her lips and secretly smiled, but even though she had smiled, she couldn't help but remind Pear Blossom. "Lihua, you can't do this outside. As a junior, how can you laugh at your elders?" "Mother, don't worry, I won't have to worry," replied Pear Blossom crisply. "Actually, it's not just 4 rooms that are so joyful. Since scoring the home, the laughter and joy from each room have increased significantly." However, no one knew that the happiest person among them was Xia Daohua, a soul-piercing outsider from another world. It's not because she split up or something, but because she was surprised to find that the small supermarket she had run half dead in her previous life had actually traveled with her. Seeking collection, seeking investment, seeking female frequency recommended tickets. 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Secrets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Secrets. Xia Daohua was originally a native of the imperial capital. After graduating from university, she joined a startup company and became a small white-collar worker. Fortunately, she caught the ride of a successful boss who ate meat, drank soup, and made a small fortune. After that, she resigned from her job with ease, bought a shop and a house, and then invested the remaining money into her childhood dream of opening a supermarket that had everything she wanted. However, the supermarket industry is not as easy to operate as imagined. Especially in recent years, not only have large-scale international chain supermarkets been chasing and blocking, but they also face fierce competition from various large companies relying on online shopping. Although Xia Daohua's supermarket has achieved her dream of being a sparrow with small size and complete internal organs, its business situation has not been very good, and it has basically been losing money in various ways. If it weren't for losing too much, she would have invested almost all her savings, and Xia Daohua wouldn't have just hung herself up with friends for a casual drink. Fortunately, this supermarket, which has devoted all her heart and effort, has remained loyal and unwavering to her. Even when she traveled across time, she unwaveringly followed along. She actually doesn't know what's going on, but let it be. In an era where war and chaos may occur at any time, and in an era where famine may occur at any time, having a supermarket in her hands is simply more reassuring than anything else. Xia Daohua has carefully observed and studied for several days, and has discovered the following patterns. 1. The storage area in the supermarket can be used as a space. It can easily bring in external items and also place items taken out from inside the supermarket. 2. The items inside the supermarket will automatically refresh every 24 hours to restore their original state. 3. The items in the storage area will not be refreshed and will remain in the same state as the summer rice flour after the last operation. At the same time, it has the function of freshness preservation. Except for the trash cans in the storage area. 4. Items in the supermarket cannot be taken out free of charge and need to be settled at the checkout counter. After checkout, the corresponding supermarket coins will be deducted from Xia Daohua's supermarket account. Xia Daohua found that the amount of supermarket currency she owned was exactly the same as the account balance of the bank card she used in daily life before going through. 5. Items in the real world can be exchanged for supermarket coins at the supermarket service desk and automatically deposited into Xia Daohua's supermarket account. So far, these are the only discoveries of summer rice flours. Perhaps supermarkets have other benefits, but we need to continue exploring them slowly. It is worth mentioning that these days, in order to recuperate from injury, the rice flour is drinking thin and countable congee water every day. The millet porridge has rice oil. Although it is indeed nutritious, it is not very anti-hungry after all. The first time Xia Daohua discovered that the supermarket was following her was because she was too hungry in the middle of the night and woke up. She couldn't help but reminisce about the delicious food from her previous life, and then sadly reminisce about the small supermarket she had been tinkering with for 5 or 6 years. Unexpectedly, just one absent-minded person was already in the supermarket. At first, Xia Daohua thought she was too focused, had hallucinations, or fell asleep and fell into a dream. But soon she realized that not only could she touch the things in the supermarket, but she could also take them out. Moreover, although there was no one in the supermarket, both the cash register and service counter could operate smoothly. However, the settlement method has changed. Since Xia Daohua discovered that she not only had a supermarket account, but also could use it to shop in the supermarket, she immediately happily picked up a thick oil and red sauce roasted chicken from the cooked food area and wolfed it down for a satisfying meal. Before the original owner was injured, he was just about to be able to eat enough. Even fine grains and eggs are the supreme delicacies in the original owner's memory, let alone this fragrant roasted chicken. After recuperating for more than 10 days, Xia Daohua has not eaten much oil and water, and her stomach often feels empty. At this moment, not to mention roasted chicken, even if it's Kaifeng cuisine that is usually too oily, she can finish a whole family bucket without taking a breath. Well, she just ate a whole roasted chicken on her own, relying on her 8-year-old body. She even cleaned up the chicken neck that she usually doesn't eat. After finishing her meal, she threw the chicken bones and wet tissues for wiping her mouth and hands into the trash can, and even brushed her teeth seriously, afraid of bringing out a hint of the smell of chicken. However, shortly after Xia Daohua left the supermarket space, she noticed her 5-year-old sister, Linghua, rolling towards her with her eyes closed and murmuring, "It smells so good." Xia Daohua tightly closed her mouth, pulled the blanket to her mouth, only revealing her nose and eyes. She gently pushed away the little girl Linghua who was already very close, and a sudden sense of guilt surged in her heart. But the existence of the supermarket is her secret. This is absolutely not to be leaked. Although Linghua is a very cute child, she cannot casually expose her biggest secret in front of this child. However, now that Xia Daohua is a child's body and has eaten and drunk enough, drowsiness has already surged up. Xia Daohua didn't hesitate for a long time, so she fell into a deep sleep. Summer water chestnuts also rolled over again, following the fragrance of roasted chicken and snuggled tightly in their sister's arms. The next morning, at dawn, when Pear Blossom got up and put on her clothes, she saw Rice Blossom and Water Chestnut, two small figures tightly pressed against each other. One was upright, the other was horizontal, sleeping with hands and feet spread out, pushing open the blanket, and sleeping soundly and sweetly. Pear Blossom couldn't help but shake her head and smile, separating the two children and letting them rest their heads on pillows. She also covered the blanket on top, so that they could sleep comfortably for a while longer. As soon as the pear blossoms move, the summer rice blossoms wake up. She opened her eyes in a daze, and at first glance, she saw a somewhat unfamiliar and beautiful girl named Pear Blossom, covering herself with a blanket. She was cold and somewhat unable to react. After she rubbed her eyes and saw the environment clearly, she slowly remembered the scene of crossing over on her own. She couldn't help but let out a soft sigh, covered her head with the blanket, and fell asleep again. I am a child now, I need to sleep more and grow my body. However, Xia Daohua only slept for less than half an hour before having to wake up. Erbuanyang and Sanbuanyang started arguing in the big kitchen. The fourth room is far from the big kitchen, but the voice of the second uncle's mother is really penetrating. Xia Daohua tightly covered her ears with a cotton quilt, but still couldn't resist the terrifying piercing sound. She simply misses her earplugs immensely. After struggling for a while, Xia Daohua couldn't bear it anymore and had no choice but to climb up. The new book has been released, welcome everyone to step on it. Seeking collection, seeking investment, seeking female frequency recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Arguments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Arguments. Just then, Pear Blossom came in and said, Rice Blossom, Water Chestnut, two lazy girls. Hurry up and get up to eat. Daohua tried to suppress the urge to get some clothes from the supermarket, put on an empty shell cotton jacket and pants, and asked Lihua. Sister, what are you arguing about this early morning, anti-air? Linghua pouted and rubbed her eyes with her small fist, coquettishly teasing the Pear Blossom with a hazy expression on her face. No, I haven't woken up yet. Pear Blossom leaned over and lifted the upper body of the water chestnut out of the bed, helping her sit firmly on her back. She quickly put on a cotton jacket while not forgetting to respond to Rice Blossom's question. What else can we do for? Which day won't they argue? Isn't it just a coincidence that they both have to cook? They're all competing to use the big kitchen first. If you ask me, with this spare time, I've made so many meals. In the past, the old Xia family used to eat together with a large family, and the four daughter-in-law took turns cooking. As long as the pot of minced rice cake is steamed on the curtain, then a large pot of congee is boiled, and half of the pickles are cut, the breakfast of the whole family is ready. But now that the family is divided, we can't eat like this anymore. Since we are not eating together, cooking is a matter of first come, second served. People in big houses usually live in the town and don't need a big kitchen. People in the fourth room wake up early, while those in the second and third rooms haven't woken up yet. Xia Yutian and Jiang have already brought back all the water they need for the day. Then Jiang cooked breakfast, and with the help of Pear Blossoms, both of them were nimble. In less than 15 minutes, breakfast could be served on the table. As Li Hua spoke, she dressed Ling Hua and put on her shoes, helping her jump off the Kong. The rice flowers on this side also wore sharp ropes and obediently climbed down from the Kong. Li Hua casually folded the quilt into tofu pieces and stuffed them into the Kong cabinet. Then he took a broom and cleaned the surface of the Kong. In the blink of an eye, a large bed was neatly arranged. 3 little girls held hands and came to the main room to have breakfast together. The table has already been arranged in the hall. The yellow rice noodles on the table are sticky with bean buns. It is steaming white. A large basin of thin millet porridge is full of attractive aroma. The pickles are finely cut, a few drops of sesame oil are ordered, and a little scallion is mixed. Just looking at it, it is delicious. Xia Yutian and Jiang have already eaten it. When Wu Lang saw the Pear Blossoms and the others coming over, he quickly stood up and beckoned them to come to the table as soon as possible. Li Hua took the water chestnut and the rice flour, pulled the 2 girls aside, let them wash their hands in the hot water that steamed the cake in the morning, and wiped the little sisters' faces one by one with a hot towel before they were allowed to eat at the table. This is still the fourth room family, sitting together like this for the first time, enjoying breakfast affectionately. When there were no separate families before, every meal was eaten together by the big family of Lao Xia. The old man and the old lady have a small Kong table alone, while the others have a table for men, a table for women, and a table for half-aged children. If it was the turn of the fourth room to cook, Jiang would have to bring pear and rice flowers, busy inside and outside, while Sun Wulang and the young water chestnut could sit down at the children's table first. Xia Daohua sincerely felt that it was still comfortable for the family to sit together and eat. In her previous life, she spent most of her time eating alone. The memory of occasionally having meals and drinks with friends, having meals with the boss and colleagues at work a few years ago, and having meals with family has been around for a long time. Her parents divorced when she was very young. After remarrying separately, it seems that both of them have forgotten that they once had a daughter. Some important milestones in her life were spent with her grandfather. Later on, when her grandfather passed away, she was completely alone. The reason why she had a dream of opening a supermarket is also because when she was a child, she liked to play at the small shop at the village entrance. Grandpa has said more than once that he wants to save some money and open a small supermarket for her in the future, so that she can eat whatever she wants. Xia Daohua lifted her head, blinked her eyes, and forcefully blinked back the tears that had almost fallen. Traveling back to ancient times, although there were countless hardships and discomforts, at least one thing was good. She finally had a caring family. The family sat together warmly, happily having breakfast. While eating, I quietly perked up my ears and listened to the noise coming from the big kitchen. Bo Nyang is feeling down due to the family separation. San Bo Nyang has always been a tough and unwilling person. When they were not separated, these two would fight every now and then. Now that there is a legitimate reason, it is even more of a quarrel. Jiang took 2 mouthfuls of congee, patted his stomach slightly, and stood up to try to persuade him to fight. Li Hua angrily threw her chopsticks and said, "Don't go." Jiang suddenly felt both angry and amused. "Pear flower, why are you so small and not big? Why are you still taking care of your mother?" Xia Yutian also frowned and said, "Li Hua, how can I talk to your mother?" Li Hua angrily said, "Mother, why are you so meddlesome? If someone is willing to argue, then go ahead and argue. When you try to persuade, the anger on both sides will not be directed towards you." Wulan also nodded in agreement, and though his tone was flat, he complained more bitterly than Li Hua. "Yeah, Mom, both of them can't understand people's language and can't distinguish between good and bad. You go argue, they won't see your good intentions, maybe they'll even arrange that you're going to rub the fire and watch the fun. You better not get tired of this and have a good meal." Daohua gave Linghua a glance, and the two of them rushed to Zhang's side with a swoosh, one on the left and the other on the right. One of them grabbed an arm and didn't let go. "Mom, don't go, stay and eat. Mom, don't you go. Water chestnuts are afraid." Seeing the children's consistent attitudes, Xia Yutian also spoke up, "The children are right. You should sit down and eat quickly." Although Xia Yutian doesn't speak much, he can say one sentence more effectively than 10,000 words from the children. Upon hearing this, Jiang sat down, although still slightly uneasy. She picked up her chopsticks, took a sticky bean bag, took 2 bites, and slowly drank congee with shredded salted vegetables. Seeing that Jiang finally listened to the advice, the children breathed a sigh of relief. Rice flowers and water chestnuts have also returned to their positions. Xia Daohua picked up yellow rice noodles and tasted sticky bean buns. Amidst its soft, sticky and sweet taste, there is a slight hint of bitterness, but it cannot conceal the strong and rough aroma of grain. The taste of bean filling is also very good, with a strong bean flavor and a natural fishy smell. Chewing carefully, there is also a slight sweetness, but it is obvious that there is no sugar added. It's really delicious. Xia Daohua praised sincerely. "Is it delicious? We collected these beans together in autumn. Do you remember the rice flowers? Li Hua asked cautiously. Don't miss it if you pass by, everyone has come. Vote before you leave. 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Stove. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Stove. It seems like I have a vague impression, but when I think about it carefully, I can't remember. Xia Daohua tried her best to recall it, but she really couldn't remember it. Her modern memories, including what she has experienced, what others said to her, what she said to others, the novels she has read, and even the web pages she browsed casually, can all be vividly recalled. But the original owner's memory can only recall some scenes and fragments sporadically. The original owner's memory is missing a lot. Of course, there may also be some memory fragments that are accidentally triggered. For example, when her uncle visited before, she suddenly remembered the face of a cousin from his family. Fortunately, in this situation, Dr. Wang has already explained it to the Xia family. When my family saw how badly she was injured, they all thought they could save her life, so they were grateful. As for forgetting the past, it is not worth mentioning compared to life. Isn't it about recognizing relatives and neighbors again? What a big deal. As long as you don't die, become disabled, paralyze, or be foolish, being able to survive with good arms and legs is stronger than anything else. Xia Daohua didn't know their thoughts, she only wholeheartedly believed that Dr. Wang was her benefactor. Dr. Wang saved the original owner's life and created conditions for his own journey. Dr. Wang cleared the obstacles in front of him. With Dr. Wang's instructions in front of him, no one would notice anything was wrong because of the occasional abnormalities she revealed. They will only intentionally or unintentionally attribute all their changes to the wound on the back of their head and the missing memories. Thanks to Dr. Wang. Seeing Xia Daohua's lost in thought and her eyes empty, Pear Flower quickly comforted her. Oh, forget it, I'll just ask casually. Don't bother with it, Daohua. Eat it quickly. If you don't eat it in a while, it will get cold. Xia Daohua regained her senses and smiled awkwardly at the pear blossom before continuing to eat. Just now, there were some hot sticky bean buns, and the temperature has become much more suitable. Li Hua is right, it's quite cold at this time. Especially in the main hall, although there are thick door curtains hanging at the entrance and 2 layers of window paper pasted on the window frames, it still feels a bit chilly. After all, there are still more than 10 days before the Chinese New Year. If only the room could be made warmer. Unfortunately, at this time, there is neither a boiler nor a radiator, let alone an electric heater or electric mattress. To get warm in winter, one can only rely on a heated kong, stove, and charcoal pot, which is simply too difficult. By the way, there is also the predecessor of the hot water bag. Tang Pazi. However, Tang Pazi is also very expensive, just like a handmade stove, it is exclusive to wealthy families, and mud legs cannot be used at all. After breakfast, when Li Hua and Wu Lang got up to pick up the table, the argument in the big kitchen also came to an end. Because Jiang listened to her children's advice and did not go to seek scolding, the two sister-in-law argued more and more fiercely, even resorting to violence. Not only did they push each other, but they also broke a bowl. The sound of breaking the bowl alarmed the old lady Zhou. Zhou scolded her two daughter-in-law in a row, and then brought her 2 sons over, causing their faces to turn purple. After making a fuss all morning, the other roommates watched a joke, feeling tired and hungry, with their stomachs growling. The second and third wives were also filled with anger, while the second wife's son and the third wife Wu finally calmed down. Zhou ordered Sun and Wu to stand in the big kitchen and personally started rolling out noodles using a large pot. The old couple and Xia Yujiao ate them. The second and third rooms all gathered in the big kitchen, using the remaining noodle soup to make a bite of cold steamed buns. Zhou looked coldly without saying a word. Seeing everyone's face scorching, as if sprinkled with chili peppers, Zhou finally spoke up and called for Erlang to run errands. He then invited the old bricklayer Chen to come to the village. Command several sons who have been separated from each other to choose their own place, separate the kitchen, and build a stove. As for the big kitchen, it is usually used by the elderly couple. On holidays or other occasions that require gatherings or hospitality, whoever needs to use it will discuss it with the elderly couple. However, although the old lady Zhou invited a bricklayer back, the wages had to be borne by each family themselves. The freshly baked housewives in charge, who had just received their silver coins, were about to take them out before they could even cover their heat, each feeling heartbroken. Even the Jiang family was slightly disappointed. But Li Hua and the others have already begun to imagine a beautiful life with an independent kitchen. In the future, we can also start a small stove. Li Hua said excitedly, her face flushed like a cute big apple. Sister, I want to eat roasted taro. Ling Hua's eyes were bright, and there was a suspicious shiny mark on the corner of her mouth, as if she had already seen the sweet taro placed in front of her. Taro is nothing. When I go to the mountains to find some game, we'll cook it in the small kitchen. Xia Daohua waved her hand vigorously. She thought to herself, even if she couldn't find the game, she wouldn't be afraid. We have such a big supermarket. Wulong, who had always been steady, suddenly covered his stomach and laughed, I'm laughing to death. With such a small person like you, you still want to go to the mountains to find wild game. Don't be taken away by the big wild wolf again. You've become a wild game yourself. Sister, look at my brother. He actually laughed at me. Can you help me hit him twice, said Daohua, holding on to the pear blossom and asking her to take control. A few children laughed and frolicked together, and Jiang couldn't help but smile. Thinking about having an independent kitchen in the future, Jiang's smile deepened as she could turn off the fire later at night, boil water at night without disturbing others, and keep the room much warmer. Old Chen, along with his son and 2 disciples, built the stoves in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th rooms in just over a day. 2 additional small tea stoves were built in the 4th room, one in the kitchen and the other in the main room. In the cold winter of the 12th lunar month, I couldn't even make mud bricks, so I had to go to the brick kiln in the town and buy some broken green bricks back. Fortunately, we can buy 4 properties together, with a larger quantity and a slightly cheaper price. In the end, regarding the stove, the portion in the main room was advanced by the old lady Zhou, while the other rooms went their separate ways. The 4th room paid 185 won. Among them, the green brick cost 60 won and the wages were 100 yuan. They also spent 25 won to buy vegetables and clean up the food to entertain the old Chen and his group. Xia Daohua quietly prepared an account book and recorded all this information. Xia Daohua has been fond of bookkeeping since she learned it. It's not just about saving money, I mainly like the feeling of having a clear idea. Later on, when she started a supermarket, Xia Daohua became even more fond of keeping accounts. However, no matter how well the accounts are remembered, they cannot withstand the power of big capital and new era, new technology, and new trends. Personal efforts are simply insignificant for the trend of the overall environment. The new book is here, seeking collection, investment, and female frequency recommendation tickets. Love you all. 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Biting Hands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Biting Hands. Xia Daohua let out a slight sigh of melancholy. She misses the world from her previous life so much. Although the supermarket followed her into this world, allowing her to no longer worry about food, clothing, and safety, completely free from worries, although in this world, she stole some family members who love her very much, but in this world where everything is very unfamiliar, I may not be destined to live a carefree and comfortable life like in my previous life. If we put in all our efforts to change from now on, will this world change because of ourselves? She has read so many wonderful books, learned so useful knowledge, and witnessed so vast a world. Really want to bury it here. She's not willing. Although she is now just a pitifully shaved scalp, with thick medicinal paste on the back of her head, and wearing a cotton jacket without even autumn clothes and pants, her soul comes from another distant time and space. From a prosperous civilization. Can't she really do anything? Xia Daohua has never been a person who easily gives up. She has made up her mind. Although one's own strength is insignificant. But the power of knowledge and wisdom can be mobilized by far more than one person. She doesn't know how far she can go or how much she can change this era. But as long as she works hard, she won't have any regrets. As for whether people will perish and politics will cease in the future, and whether all progress will disappear with her departure, that is not something she should worry about. The truth is infinite, and every inch brings joy. She has come and brought some benefits to this world, which is enough. After thinking about these things, Xia Daohua suddenly felt relaxed and became lively and cheerful. Their words and actions actually seem a bit like children. It's almost Chinese New Year. Winter can be considered a leisure season, especially here in Baiguan town. The coldest time in winter can reach -40 degrees Celsius. Not to mention the hard frozen land, the walls and doors and windows will be covered with thick frost. The best choice for this kind of weather is to hide indoors, cat winter. But, cat winter, is not something that doesn't go unnoticed. It's almost Chinese New Year. The thick and thin clothes and bedding of the whole family need to be starched, washed, and patched. The bedding still needs to be opened, washed clean, and then fluffy with cotton swabs, making a new one. After all, you can't celebrate the new year with stains. The house and yard also need to be cleaned thoroughly. The roofs, walls, warehouses, and firewood stacks that cannot be cleaned up on weekdays also need to be cleaned and tidied up one by one. In addition, this year is the first new year after the family split. The daughters-in-law at the head of the house are all making their own decisions for the first time, secretly fighting and striving to show off. Although Jiang has a gentle temperament, she cannot avoid vulgarity in this regard. She was so busy that she didn't touch her feet. Xia Yutian offered to help her, but she still refused. Xia Yutian had to find a job on his own and clean up the firewood piles in the fourth room. Lihua, Wulong, Daohua, and Linghua are also busy running around. At the age of 12, Pear Blossom is agile, hard-working, and capable of supporting half an adult. Even those thick sheets and covers can be rubbed with a clatter on the washboard. 10-year-old Goro is also steady and reliable. He can quickly clean up the ash in the stove, quickly unclog the grate, raise a broom high, and clean the spider webs in the corners of the roof. The 8-year-old rice flower and the 5-year-old diamond flower, although also mixed and happily, their movements were basically purely adding to the chaos. When Daohua was washing dishes, she felt that the water was too cold and there was no dishwashing detergent, and her eyebrows furrowed to the point of catching flies. I wasted a lot of grass, wood, and ash, and almost accidentally smashed the plate. The most crucial thing is that all the dishes and chopsticks she washed had to be reworked and washed again by Jiang. Linghua was able to handle helping Jiang with a scallion and garlic, but when she was helping Jiang with a basin, she suddenly stumbled on a stone under her feet and fell backwards with a loud bang. Fortunately, the basin is fine. However, the water chestnut was so painful that tears welled up. Jiang has a good temper. Although she is very busy and tired, she didn't say anything to the two daughters who are getting busier and busier. On the contrary, Li Hua, who is the older sister, is more likely to explode. I'm begging you, two little ancestors. Go play somewhere else and don't cause trouble for me here, okay? Xia Daohua smiled awkwardly and opened her mouth with grievances. The water chestnuts, who were about to burst into tears, quickly withdrew. The diamond flower was pulled by the rice flower and stumbled away, finally holding back her tears, but still felt a bit like crying. She likes to play with Pear Blossom, but Pear Blossom actually ignores her and yells at her loudly. Moreover, Daohua's head is so ugly, and it is coated with unsightly colored ointment, emitting a bitter, astringent, and pungent taste. Xia Daohua pulled the water chestnuts back to the main room, stirred up the fire in the small tea stove, sat on a pot of water, and then pulled the water chestnuts to bake in front of the small tea stove. Daohua couldn't help but want to bake something to eat on the stove. She was thinking about whether to bake potatoes or sweet potatoes, or bake mantis slices. She listened to Linghua tilt her head and asked herself, "Daohua, shall we go out and make a snowman?" Xia Daohua shook her head without hesitation and refused. When she was a child, she loved making snowmen and even had snowball fights. But now, let's just forget it. Don't say that your injury is not yet healed. Even if it has completely healed, it would be better not to go out on such a cold day. At the beginning of this year, there is no place to get anti-inflammatory injections and glucose. If you are sick all your life, you can only see traditional Chinese medicine. Looking at traditional Chinese medicine means that she can't escape drinking bitter Chinese medicine. Just thinking about the Chinese medicine she has been drinking these days makes her tongue tingle with bitterness. Give her a break. Linghua wrinkled her bun face, her round and big eyes filled with tears. She saw the flood about to break through the dam, and the thunder in the clear sky was about to explode in her ears. Time flies. Xia Daohua quickly took out a sugar ball covered in finger and tooth marks and stuffed it into the open mouth of the water chestnut with lightning speed. This candy ball was still given to her by Goro the previous time as a reward for her squeezing her nose and drinking a large bowl of black bitter medicine juice. However, it may have been hidden for too long, and there are many suspicious marks and colors on this candy ball. Of course, Xia Daohua couldn't eat it, but she didn't feel embarrassed to throw it in front of Goro, so she had to hide it in the storage area of the supermarket. Just now I saw that the water chestnut was about to cry, and I came up with a quick idea, so I contributed it. However, Daohua still held on to the sugar ball and didn't dare to let go directly. She is afraid to focus too much on crying, and if she chokes on her trachea, it will be a big trouble. The water chestnut tasted the long-lost sweetness and looked at Xia Daohua with tears in its eyes, seeming somewhat incredulous. Then, with a whimper, it bit onto the sugar ball and even onto Daohua's finger. Seeking collection, book reviews, chapter reviews, and female frequency recommendation tickets. My dear readers, where are you all? Bubble up and let out a squeak. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Crisis. Xia Daohua's face contorted in pain, and her voice involuntarily changed tone. Hurry up. You're biting my finger. Linghua let go of her teeth, let go of Xia Daohua's fingers, but immediately bit firmly onto the sugar ball, revealing a big smile and purring. Sister, you're so kind. This little girl usually calls herself Daohua, but now she remembers to call her sister. Xia Daohua couldn't help but smile. Linghua suddenly stood up and threw herself into Xia Daohua's arms. She reached out her arms and wrapped them around her neck, popping and leaving a wet saliva mark on Xia Daohua's face. Taking advantage of Xia Daohua's stunned moment, the water chestnut chuckled and turned around before running away. The soft little body suddenly pounced on itself in the cold, then suddenly let go and ran away. Everything was so unexpected. Xia Daohua turned her head, lifted her sleeves, wiped away the saliva marks on her face, and for a moment, she couldn't quite explain what it felt like in her heart. The two children, one real and one fake, intentionally or unintentionally caused trouble on the side. Jiang brought pear blossoms and her work efficiency improved significantly. In less than an hour, the two of them had already washed all the bedding and clothes that needed to be unpacked and cleaned at home, hung them on the clothesline in the yard, and hung them to dry. There are many colorful patched sheets, clothes, pants, skirts, robes, and other items hanging on the clothesline. When the wind blows, they make a loud noise, and the scene is magnificent, just like the fluttering of 10,000 national flags. The sunshine is nice, but the weather is still too cold. Soon, these wet clothes, which had been twisted as hard as possible several times, were frozen hard like ice cubes. And the water droplets that seep down along the texture of the fabric have frozen into tassel like ice skates. The children walked under the clothesline, happily raising their firewood sticks and breaking the ice skate. Some children foolishly put ice skates in their mouths and eat them as candy. Xia Daohua couldn't bear to look directly at her. She began to seriously consider whether to sneak in some sugar balls and give them to these little ones for sweet treats. After thinking for a moment, she decided to let it go for the time being. Children should eat less sugar, which is good for their teeth. Xia Daohua only stood slightly in the yard, glanced a few times, then turned around and returned to the house, continuing to heat the fire. She was dressed thick and not very cold. But the coolness on my head is unbearable. For the convenience of applying medicine, her hair was shaved off. I'm afraid of touching wounds or getting stuck in medicine, so I can't wear a hat. Jiang specially wrapped a headscarf around her, but in order to avoid the wound, she only slightly covered it and only covered the lower half of her face. The degree of warmth can be almost negligible. The summer rice flowers returned to the house, but the water chestnuts stayed outside. Zhaohua and Lu Lang from Wufang are both here. With playmates, the older sister who doesn't cooperate with her own play is naturally thrown aside by the little one. While rolling snowballs and making snowmen with Zhaohua and Lu Lang, Linghua secretly complained in her heart. After Daohua injured her brain, people became lazy. She couldn't even call her, make a snowman. Moreover, she was willing to give her sugar balls given by her brother to eat. I'm afraid she might have been really foolish. Xia Daohua can't hear the voice of Linghua, let alone the little girl who is roast that she has fallen silly. She watched as there was no one around and happily entered the supermarket. After checking her remaining balance of supermarket coins, she bought a bunch of cooked foods and snacks in one go and placed them in the supermarket storage area that was convenient for her to access at any time. In fact, the food level of the Lao Xia family is quite good among the households of the farmers in Baiguan village. Although the main staple food is mostly coarse grains, with no meat in the dishes, and vegetables such as radishes, cabbage, and pickled mustard bumps, at least they can be fully managed. However, for Xia Daohua, this meal is too difficult to swallow. Eating 1 or 2 meals, occasionally changing flavors, is quite acceptable. Eating it every day is like being punished. Xia Daohua hid in the storage area of the supermarket and ate a whole box of cut sauce elbows in one go. Originally, in modern times, Xia Daohua preferred white meat more. Red meat is mainly steak and lamb legs, and occasionally there is also some tenderloin. As for pork belly and elbow, no matter how delicious they are, she doesn't even want to touch them. Mainly because the fat content is too high, she feels that it is not healthy enough. Now, after being deeply educated by the ruthless reality, she fully realizes the beauty of fat. A box of sauce elbows, labeled as 200 grams in weight, she didn't have anything and just ate it empty-mouthed. Surprisingly, she finished it all in one breath, still feeling a bit unsatisfied. However, Xia Daohua restrained the urge to have a big meal. She carefully cleaned her oily fingers and lips with a wet tissue, brushed her teeth, rinsed her mouth, and threw the packaging box and used wet wipes into the garbage bin in the storage area before tiptoeing out of the space. The hall was quiet, without a single person. The fire of the small tea stove is still very strong, and the branches make a sound of peeling. From afar outside the window came bursts of laughter and cheers, occasionally accompanied by the sounds of water chestnuts, jujube blossoms, and Lu Lang shouting loudly. It seems that the children are still playing in the snow outside, happy. Looking through the furnace door and the jumping flames in the small tea stove, Xia Daohua suddenly thought of a serious question. What is the relationship between the flow rate of time in the outside world and space? The Xia family doesn't have a clock. To understand the time, they usually watch the sun during the day and the stars at night. It's purely based on their feelings when it's cloudy or rainy, although there are various timing tools in the supermarket, they cannot be used directly. Xia Daohua was slightly troubled by this issue, but did not pay much attention to it. She's just a little kid sitting on a treasure mountain now. What she needs most now is not to delve deeper and explore the unknown, but to be quiet and obedient, develop in a sleazy way, and stay away from trouble. For this, she not only needs to do her best to play the role of a normal child, but also actively learn about the information of this era. What she knows now is: the village where Lao Xia's family is located is called Baiguan Village. Baiguan Village is under the jurisdiction of Baiguan Town. Baiguan Town is under the jurisdiction of Baiguan County. Baiguan County belongs to Dachu and is the northernmost border town of Dachu. To the north of Baiguan County, after crossing 18 mountain ranges, you will reach the boundary of Baiman. Almost every 2 to 3 years, the northern barbarians would send troops to attack Baiguan County. Unfortunately, the fortunate thing is that Baiguan Village is located in Baiguan County, a very remote corner and not very prosperous. The most important thing is that those 18 mountains are too difficult to climb. So, although the northern barbarians often invade the border, the flames of war rarely directly burn into Baiguan Village. These pieces of information mostly come from the original owner's memory. The thought of herself almost sitting on a volcano made Xia Daohua's scalp tingle uncontrollably. Seeking collection, book reviews, comments, bubbles, female frequency recommendation tickets. Love you, 3, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Exploration. The law of this era does not encourage migration. People in this era also generally have a deep attachment to their hometown. Unlike the time and space when Xia Daohua came, many people, especially young people, do not have such a deep attachment to their hometown. Instead, they hope to explore a broader world, experience more, and gain more knowledge. Wherever money is, people will flow. And in this world before you, as long as there is a piece of land for you to cultivate, people will be firmly rooted in that land like trees or weeds, unwilling to leave even if they die. Unless there is a sudden and uncontrollable natural disaster, such as drought, a vast expanse of land, for example, floods, with vast oceans everywhere, for example, in war, bones are white and blood is flowing. But when these things happen, it's often too late to escape. Xia Daohua doesn't want this kind of thing to happen to the Xia family, especially not to herself. But now she is just an insignificant child, and her shaved hair is reminding everyone. A few days ago, she broke her head on the edge of the well. If these thoughts were to be expressed now, I'm afraid everyone would feel that she has fallen off guard. After much thought, Xia Daohua still felt that in the short term, she could only hold back and slowly search for suitable opportunities, step by step instilling the idea of relocation in her family. Xia Daohua never found a suitable opportunity, and in a vague anxiety, days passed day by day, with several heavy snowfalls, and the Chinese New Year was getting closer and closer. Lao Xia's house was bustling with activity both inside and outside, and every head of the house was busy with the new year. Jiang brought pear blossoms and tidied up everything inside and outside the house, not only sweeping the house, washing clothes, dismantling and washing cotton clothes and quilts, but also making new ones. He even rewrote the door curtains with cotton, and even pasted the window paper again. Xia Yutian also took Wulang into the mountain twice and cut a lot of firewood before returning. It is worth mentioning that Daohua, carrying a diamond flower, chased after Xia Yutian and Goro's buttocks and secretly followed them into the mountain. Then, he caught 2 wild rabbits with gray-yellow fur and came back. Facing Xia Daohua, who was holding a rabbit in one hand, and Linghua, who had cute eyebrows and eyes, without hesitation, replaced Daohua with sister. From then on, that little mouth was like wiping honey. My sister was long and my sister was short, and I never changed my mouth again. When Xia Yutian skinned the rabbit, Xia Daohua couldn't bear to look and hit out. The diamond flower, on the other hand, stared intently at it with relish. From beginning to end, not a single detail was missed. Its eyes were bright and full of interest. Jiang sent the old couple one of the two neatly organized rabbits. The remaining one was cut into small pieces, with a lot of potatoes and radishes added. A large pot was stewed for the children, and the other half was coated with salt and hung on the roof beam. Prepare to eat during the Chinese New Year. When stewing rabbits at night, Yang couldn't help but run to the fourth room and scolded Jiang Shi a few times. However, Erlang, who was chasing after her later, forcefully pulled her back. The main force working in the second room are the silent Erlang and the equally quiet Daohua. Uncle Er works diligently in the fields and can be considered one of the capable people in Baiguan village. But as soon as they arrived home, they spread their hands and feet, leaned against the bedding roll, and lay on the kong, pretending to be the master. At home, he doesn't pick up the grass horizontally or vertically, even if the oil bottle falls in front of his eyes, he doesn't bring a helping hand. Sun, the second uncle's mother, is quick-witted but speaks harshly. She gave birth to 3 sons and 3 daughters, and besides the old lady Zhou, she gave birth to no one else. This seemed to give her an inexplicable confidence that she dared to confront any Xia family member in any inappropriate occasion or time, and arguing was a common occurrence. Sun naturally wouldn't be polite to soft persimmons like Jiang. Facing one's own children, that momentum is even stronger. But Sun's harshness is also divisive. When facing Erlang, she will unconsciously be a bit gentle. She assigned as many tasks as possible to a few children in the second room. Among them, the oldest and most sensible Erlang and Daohua were the ones she assigned the most. Apricot and plum blossoms are also quite diligent. As for Sanlang and Sailang, they often take her words for granted and run away as soon as they hear her call for work. Sometimes, they even hide outside and never come back until they have enough food. Erlang did the most work and said the least at home, but it was unclear whether it was due to delayed marriage or because Erlang was the eldest son of the second wife. When facing Erlang, Sun could not be as straightforward as when facing others. Xia Daohua's ears were sharp, and she heard Erlang pulling Sun Shi away while saying to her, "Aunt San's bean buns have all been steamed, but our bean filling hasn't been cooked yet. Mom, why do you have free time to chat with Aunt C here?" Sun only said half a sentence. Who's talking to her? Then he was distracted by the information in Erlang's words. The third wife's hands and feet are so fast. No, I have to hurry and eat some bean filling. Mrs. Zhou generously lent the large kitchen to her daughter-in-law these days, and let them discuss who to use and when. However, they had to start using it at dawn every day, and at the latest, they could only use it until dark because the old couple slept early, slept lightly, and were afraid of noise. So Sun from the second house, Wu from the third house, and Han from the fifth house are all racing against time. Zhang's ideas are different from theirs. Although the population of Xifang is quite large, the largest pear blossom is only 12 years old, so she can't actually eat so much dry food in January. Jiang thought that since she had a small kitchen, no matter how much cake she steamed, she could still make a fuss in her own small kitchen, so she wouldn't go to the big kitchen to compete with a few sisters-in-law. Upon learning what Jiang meant, Xia Yutian immediately felt a surge of pride. At most, one's own daughter-in-law is the most sensible. Always and everywhere, you can think of yourself ahead. Where can I find such a good daughter-in-law who is filial to my in-laws, humble to my sister-in-law, and kind to my children? Watching Xia Yutian grin foolishly, Jiang blushed inexplicably. Xia Daohua couldn't help but smile slightly as she saw the interaction between the couple. My family has a good relationship, maybe we can start from this perspective and persuade them to leave this dangerous place. Xia Daohua seized the opportunity and conducted her first exploration. Dad, Mom. Daohua, how did you come here? Do you feel better? Do you still have a headache? If it doesn't hurt anymore, I feel like the back of my head is always itching. I want to reach out and scratch twice, but I'm afraid I might scratch the wound. Good child, that's about to grow well. You must endure it for the next few days, but don't catch it. Hey! The crispy ground responded, and the summer rice flowers seemed to unintentionally turn to the main topic. It's so cold here. Our ancestors, why didn't they choose a warmer place to live? Seeking collection, seeking female frequency recommendation tickets, asking for a paw print to tell me that you are still. The cold ice rain slapped on the lonely author's face, making it swollen. But I am still very happy. Writing itself is very enjoyable. Some people see it as double, triple, and end-fold happiness. Love you all. 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Breaking Through. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Breaking Through. Our ancestors, who used to live in the Central Plains, were also wealthy families. Otherwise, your grandfather and your eldest grandfather wouldn't have had the spare money to study when they were young. Jiang explained to Daohua with a smile. At this point, she and Xia Daohua exchanged a glance. The couple coincidentally thought that if it weren't for the fact that the old man was already literate, he wouldn't have been so persistent about having someone at home attend school. Seeing Daohua tilting her head and eagerly looking at herself, Jiang continued to speak softly to her. Later, it was because of the war that our ancestors came here. Although it's a bit cold here, there is a lot of unowned wasteland, and the land is very fertile. Even a handful of it will produce oil. However, none of this can compare to the biggest benefit of not going to war. Daohua was completely confused and said, "Isn't it true that the northern barbarians will attack Baiguan County every few years?" Silly child, that hit the county town of Baiguan, which is over 100 miles away from us in this corner. The county town is guarded by officials and soldiers from the imperial court, and the northern barbarians generally cannot enter. Besides, even if they have some bad luck and come in, they still like to rob the wealthy families in the county town. They don't even bother to take a glance at our poor rural area. After hearing these words, Xia Daohua roughly understood their thoughts, but she still felt very uneasy. Unfortunately, Lao Xia's family doesn't even have many books, let alone maps. Without a map, it is impossible to see where the terrain are the safest in this era. Xia Daohua can only comfort herself. She is too anxious to eat hot tofu, so let's take it slow. The busyness of the family continues. On the 23rd of the 12th lunar month, Li Zheng's family began to slaughter pigs. As in previous years, Li Zhengjia was always the first to kill pigs. The children in the village happily ran to see the pig being slaughtered. Originally not interested in killing pigs, Daohua was also pulled over by Linghua and Wufang Zhaohua. Linghua and Zhaohua happily crowded forward with a few children of similar age in the village, eagerly sucking their fingers and staring at the fat pig on the chopping board. They watched with good eyes as the butcher bled the pig, blew the pig's skin, and divided it into pieces. Xia Daohua suppressed her gaze for a while and saw that the attention of the water chestnuts and the others was all on the pig, so she quietly withdrew. I wandered aimlessly in the village by myself for 2 rounds, and then walked towards an old house near the mountain. This old house was built decades ago. Now it's very old and naturally no one lives there. The thatch on the roof was blown away by the cold wind, and several large holes were broken in the roof. The walls were also on the verge of collapse, with one wall already half collapsed. Looking from a distance, the whole house looks like a triangular shack. Only when you get closer can you see its original appearance. However, as soon as Xia Daohua walked near it, she heard the sound of someone talking in the old house. Xia Daohua felt the sound familiar, so she stood still and listened slightly. A few words of cold wind blew over and she was taken aback. That female voice is clearly like the voice of my aunt Xia Yujiao. The male voice also had a certain familiarity, probably someone the original owner knew, but she couldn't tell who it was. Xia Daohua's body movements were much faster than her brain, and she immediately hid in space. Breaking into someone else's secret is never a good thing. However, this avoidance allowed Xia Daohua to discover a benefit of the space supermarket. In the storage area of the space supermarket, not only can you hear the sound outside, but you can also see the scenery outside. It's just that the observation port is a bit small, it's a floor mirror located in the supermarket storage area. Xia Daohua's intuition is correct. She just hid in the space, and two people walked out of the dilapidated house. One of them is Xia Yujiao, the youngest daughter of the elderly couple of the Xia family and the aunt of the original owner, who has already been engaged but has not yet married. And the other one, with a thick and sturdy figure, a face full of whiskers, big eyes with a lot of whiteness, looks fierce. The bearded man wore a green silk robe that didn't fit well, with a blue silk square scarf tied around his head and a pair of black-faced white-soled official boots on his feet. He looked around for a long time before finally speaking. Perhaps I heard it wrong. The footsteps were quite light just now, maybe it wasn't a person, but someone's dog ran over from here. Xia Yujiao was a bit shy, lowered her head, and whispered, "I'll go back first." The bearded man grabbed Xia Yujiao's waist and said, "Yujiao, listen to me. Don't marry that sick seedling. After the Chinese New Year, I'll take care of my yellow-faced woman and come to your house to propose a marriage." Xia Yujiao struggled for a moment but didn't break free. She was so anxious that she started punching her bearded arm twice and said, "Hurry up and let go. What does it look like? If anyone sees this, how do you want me to be a person? Yujiao, if you don't promise me, I won't let go. It's not that I don't promise you, I really can't promise you. Not to mention the fact that you have a wife and children. Just talking about my side, my parents have already arranged a marriage for me. The old Xia family is not wrong, even if Xia Jiabao is a sick seedling, my family cannot betray our trust and just withdraw like this. I came to see you this time just to make it clear to you. You quickly let go of me. Don't let it go. I won't let it go." Her beard played a rascal, and Xia Yujiao was so anxious that she began to burst into tears. "Woo-woo, are you trying to force me to death?" Seeing Xia Yujiao crying sadly, with a runny nose and tears all over her face, her beard finally let go of her. "Yujiao, don't cry, don't cry. Just promise me, don't rush to get married, I will definitely come up with a solution." Xia Yujiao didn't say anything, choking up her tears as she walked away. After standing in place for a while, the bearded man suddenly shouted loudly, "Stinky kid, come out, I saw you." Xia Daohua was startled. Is it not safe to hide in the supermarket? Can you see outside yourself, and can you also see yourself from outside? Immediately after, Xia Daohua saw that the bearded man looked around in confusion for a while, changed direction, and loudly repeated the sentence he had just said. "Drink, it turned out to be deceiving me." Xia Daohua wiped the sweat off her forehead and thought to herself, "Fortunately, my movements were slow, otherwise I almost fell for you, this guy." She had just recalled for a while and felt that her beard looked very familiar. It was probably someone she knew, but she couldn't remember who that person was. His beard circled around the dilapidated house and shouted in every direction, but no one responded to him. In the end, the bearded man looked around with a skeptical expression on his face, but ultimately left step by step, turning back 3 times. It wasn't until her beard disappeared that Xia Daohua came out of the supermarket. Seeking collection, seeking female frequency recommendation tickets, seeking book reviews, seeking comments, thank you everyone. 3. End of this chapter.